In December of 2020, whilst the world was still knee deep in the vid, I decided to treat myself to an Oculus Quest 2. Back then I thought to myself that virtual reality was the future and that in 5 years time everyone would have a VR headset and consoles would be a thing of the past. So now it's been 5 years and so this is the controller for my Quest 2 and as you can see, I don't know if the camera's going to show it, but you see that white stuff that's in there? I don't think you can actually see it too well, but that is actually where a battery corroded inside of it and they had to scrape it out with a toothpick because it wouldn't work, and these are like £70 each. So that just goes to show how much I use my Oculus Quest 2. So yeah, make sure you change the batteries in your controllers because that can happen. But yeah, back to the video. So yeah, I was a bit off with that prediction. Not only does no one have a VR headset, it seems the whole genre is just starting to rot away, like the battery in my controller. I can't remember the last time I saw a game advertised or anyone speaking about a VR game online, which is a shame, because deep down I absolutely love VR gaming. There's just simply nothing like it. Honestly, just watching gameplay doesn't do it justice. It's something you really have to see for yourself to get the full experience. I'll be honest, I'm using this video as an excuse to play some VR games because I really don't get the time anymore. Plus I think it's the perfect time to look at the genre as a whole, as a certain company is releasing a new standalone headset early next year, so we might be about to enter a bit of a resurgence in the VR world. So let's take a look back at not only VR's history but also my own experience and where we are now to find out if VR gaming is finished. The history of VR gaming actually goes all the way back to the 1970s, but I'm not going to bore you by talking about absolutely every piece of history. Instead, just know in the late 70s and most of the 80s, virtual reality headsets were being worked on by scientists and the likes of NASA. It wasn't until the early 90s that Sega would start on the concept. They had big plans for VR, even showing off a headset, but in all honesty, this wasn't really going to work, especially when most games were still in 2D. I don't even know how you expect to have a fully 3D world to explore in VR when most games still look like this. Sega did release it in arcade form in 1994 as a sort of virtual rollercoaster ride, but that was pretty much it. You also had Nintendo with their infamous Virtual Boy, which wasn't really VR. Companies in the mid-90s realised that VR gaming was just not possible, and it still felt like science fiction. This carried on into the 2000s, as there just wasn't really any mention of virtual reality. That was until 2012.
My name is Palmer Lucky, and I'm a virtual reality enthusiast and the designer of the Rift.
In 2012 we finally got to see the Oculus Rift, a VR headset that would finally make gaming inside a virtual world a reality. I remember seeing the previews for the headset back then, and even though it was interesting to see virtual reality for the first time, I wasn't that excited for it. Most videos just showed some journalists with a headset on, just looking around as they spoke about their experience. It was clear we're still quite a few years away from these headsets being widely accessible. The Oculus Rift wouldn't release properly until 2016, so for a long time to get your hands on one you either had to have a lot of money or be a famous YouTuber. And by the time it released in 2016 it cost around $600 and on top of that you needed a high-end PC to run the games in the first place, so to buy one you either had to have a lot of money or be a famous YouTuber. Just like when I first saw the previews back in 2012, even though I was interested in VR, I wasn't desperately wanting to try it, because again, just watching someone else play VR games just isn't that interesting. But it wouldn't be too long until I got my first taste of VR gaming. In 2017, Sony released their very first PlayStation VR headset. Finally had a more affordable alternative to the headsets like the Oculus and the newer HTC Vive. If you already owned a PS4, you were halfway there, but again, just like all the other times I had seen VR, I just wasn't sold on it. Plus the headset was still north of £300, which I just couldn't afford at the time. In August of that year, I went to a gaming convention called Insomnia. I got to try a few unreleased games, but the most notable thing I tried that day was PlayStation VR. Here's a picture of me actually trying it for the first time. I got to play Gran Turismo in a full racing sim setup. So, was I sold on VR now that I got to try it? Well, let's put it this way. That same weekend, I traded in my 2-month-old Nintendo Switch for a PSVR and all the accessories. So yeah, I guess you could say I was sold on it. After trying it that weekend and truly seeing the potential of VR gaming, I didn't need any more convincing that it was something I should get into. All I had was a small taste of the VR experience in Gran Turismo, but it was enough to sell it to me. One of the first games I tried fully was Resident Evil 7. I had already played through the game in the traditional way, but experiencing it in VR was a completely new experience. Every area just felt so real, being able to peek out of windows, looking around corners as you're hiding from the members of the Baker family. just added another layer of horror to what was already a terrifying experience. The only problem with this though was that you still had to use the traditional PS4 controller, as there was no motion controls, which kind of takes you out of the experience a little. Thankfully I had another game which would utilise the motion controls. This would be Job Simulator. This game is a fun way to introduce anyone to VR. It's a cool little game with not much of an objective, instead you just get to interact with different things around you, depending on which job you choose to do. These two games were the perfect example of what VR could offer. On one hand, taking an already existing game and putting you in that world, immersing you on a whole nother level, and a game that lets you interact with absolutely everything you can see, fully making you feel like you're in that world. Over the next few years, my library of PSVR games would continue to grow as I just grabbed whatever would offer a new experience, whether it be a boxing simulator in the form of Creed, an action movie like Shooter in Blood and Truth, or taking an old classic and porting that experience over with the likes of Skyrim VR, which was just an insane experience. I remember one of the very first quests you go on, you end up in a cave with massive spiders, and seeing that in VR, well, it was an experience, let me tell you. There was such a vast library available on PS4, and even though I didn't have big PC titles like Pavlov and Blade and Sorcery, I'd say it still offered a great casual experience. It was definitely a good entry point, but I hate to say it, it wasn't all positive. The best way to describe the PlayStation VR and all its components is kinda like a weapon in Dead Rising 2. It's like Sony took a few different accessories, got some tape and just strapped it all together. The camera used for tracking was just the standard PS4 camera. The controllers were from Sony's failed Wii ripoff for the PlayStation 3, the PlayStation Move. Yes, you heard that right, the PlayStation 3. These controllers just weren't built for these types of games. Developers had to find a workaround for things like movement, which ended up making most games feel quite jarring, with you having to teleport or move the controller around to either move forwards or backwards. It just wasn't that great, especially when the controller tracking sometimes just didn't work, like the PS4 camera and the PS3 Move controllers don't like each other and are constantly fighting. This can be especially annoying with something like Super Hot, a game where time only moves when you move, so every movement you make is important. But that doesn't matter when you just see your right hand wander off in the distance, because yet again the PS4 camera is just being an arsehole to the inferior controller made for the PS3. Whilst I'm talking about controllers, I think Sony made newer Move controllers built for VR and also a newer camera, but because they were all just branded the same, if you were like me and bought it all second hand, there was no way of telling. The ones I had were shocking. They would only charge if your PS4 was turned on, and the battery life lasted about as long as Wolverhampton Wanderers clean sheet. It meant that I spent most of my time just waiting for these bastard things to charge, for them to only last about half an hour. This wasn't even the biggest problem for the headset though, that was the crazy amount of wires you had to plug in to get this thing to work. The headset came with this little box which would act as an in-between between the headset and the PS4. You had to plug in the VR's own power brick, then 2 HDMI leads, and then the VR headset to the box. It was that bad, all the wires were numbered so you knew how many steps you had to go through to set it all up. And at the time I never really had space just to leave it all out and connected. So after every playthrough I had to put it all away back in the box. It was frustrating because friends and family would always want to try it, but when it takes about 2 to 3 working days to set up, I just got to the point where I couldn't be arsed anymore. As the years went on, I would get more and more frustrated with Sony's attempt at VR, as newer games would come out like Blood and Truth and The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, games that I really wanted to play, but I just knew the hassle of trying to navigate them in this way would just not be worth it. Honestly, looking back, the PS4's VR experience was okay, but it did seem like Sony could have done a better job with the peripherals, which they would fix with their next generation version, which we won't talk about that. But honestly, if you want to experience VR for the first time, but you're on a tight budget and already own a PS4, well, you're in luck. These things go for super cheap nowadays, and here in the UK, second-hand stores are selling them for as cheap as £30, which is still an absolute bargain, considering there's still tons of fun games available on the platform. By 2020, I had really just given up with my PlayStation VR headset, and it started collecting dust, which is a shame, because I really enjoyed that gaming experience. By the end of the year, after another lovely lockdown, I spoke to a few colleagues at work who also invested into the Sony VR experience, and they told me they switched to something else, a VR headset that would literally change the game. I remember Boxing Day 2020 like it was yesterday. I got up bright and early and walked to my local second-hand game store and picked up an Oculus Quest 2. I then went to the only shop that was open, picked up some cereal and had my own little second Christmas morning, which sounds really nice, but I was 24 years of age in 2020, so it ends up just sounding a little bit sad. But it was the first time I was living by myself and I was just fresh out of self-isolation jail, but still not really able to see anyone face to face and absolutely bored out of my head of just playing my PS4 over the last few months. I just couldn't wait to play something new, so once I got home I bought a shit ton of games and spent the next 2 weeks going into another lockdown finally getting the VR experience I always wanted. You see, the major problems with the PSVR, like the constant setting up with all the wires, the controllers not really working with the camera, and also not having the right button layout for a good experience, all those problems were gone with the Oculus Quest 2. Everything was built into the headset, so setting it up was as simple as just putting it on your head and turning it on, which was a breath of fresh air after dealing with a fucking Crystal Maze level puzzle of setting up the PlayStation VR. The Quest line of headsets is similar to what the Steam Deck is to PC gaming for VR, giving people a much more accessible way to get a taste of what this type of gaming has to offer without breaking the bank and making it more accessible for the casual player. For me, the best thing about having the Quest 2 was being able to play some of the great games I had on PlayStation, now without the horrendous controller tracking. Finally, games like Super Hot and Walking Dead Saints and Sinners were playable in a much more VR orientated way and a lot more enjoyable. But not only did the Quest 2 offer a better experience for those games, it also had tons more games overall, with a lot of titles that were big on PC at the time, like VR Chat and Pavlov, and even its own exclusive, like its very own Battle Royale Population 1. The library of games just seemed endless, and it was only getting bigger. You see, the Quest 2 came out at the perfect time, because at Christmas time back in 2020 it was almost impossible to get a new next-gen games console. Everywhere was sold out, and you'd have to pay almost double to get one from anywhere. So thanks to this, I think a lot of people, including myself, opted for a VR headset. And which headset was the most accessible and affordable at the time? Of course, it was the Quest 2. Thanks to its increase in sales and popularity, we saw more and more games come to the platform. Iconic PC VR titles like Blade & Sorcery and Boneworks had ports to the platform. We even had a port of the classic Resident Evil 4 made exclusively for the Quest 2. It was such an exciting time to own one of these headsets, as every month it felt like more and more new and unique experiences were coming out. The headset was just also perfectly designed when it came to its OS. It's essentially an Android device, which means that it's pretty easy to download mods and even emulators to it that aren't available on its store, but also for someone who likes to record gameplay. The Quest 2 also offered the best recording experience by far. Do you remember how I said that PSVR had a shit ton of wires? Now imagine adding an Elgato game capture device to that mess while also trying to record decent audio. It wasn't a great experience. See you later, and before we go, bitch! With the Quest 2, it's all built in. You can record from the click of a button, and it also records your microphone, so there's no need to set up any external recording, and it works quite well. Here, let me show you. Right then, I should take a break from playing SpongeBob Zombies in VR, which is a sentence I never thought I'd say, just to ask kindly, please subscribe to the channel. I am so close to 500 subscribers. I wanted to hit it before the end of the year. It's still possible with your help, so I just want to say massive thank you at the end of the year for all the support. I have changed essentially my format throughout the year, and the response has been insane. So thank you so much to everyone who's supported the channel by subscribing, liking, commenting, just watching the videos. Thank you so much. It's helped massively. And yeah, there's been some fun videos I've made this year, as you can see. In VR, look, you can even watch it in VR. No other YouTube channel offers that. That's a lie. But yeah, I've got so much content for you to watch if you're new to the channel, and I've got so much more content coming in the new year. But please help me hit that 500 subscriber goal by the end of the year. There's a few days left. I'm going to keep this short because the video is already too long. So yeah, please subscribe. Hit that subscribe button right there. Do it in VR if you want to. And I want to get back to playing SpongeBob Zombies. So I'll drop my gun. I've got no ammo in that one. I've got no money for the mystery box. Fuck's sake. Oh, fuck it. I'm going back to bed. So with its great library of games, an almost perfect form factor, and essentially portable VR experience, the Quest seems to be perfect, right? Well, it almost is. For me, the one thing that really let the Quest 2 down was its storage. It's not expandable at all, so you're stuck with whatever space you decide to go with. And for me at the time, that was a whopping 64 gig, which I know what you're thinking, that was my own fault. I should have went for the larger storage option. But in my defence, I did do a bit of research before buying it to see what the biggest game on the Quest 2 was, which at the time was like 4 gig, so I thought it would be more than enough room until a few months later, when Medal of Honor Above and Beyond released at a whopping 41 gigs. They should have called it Medal of Honor Above and Beyond Your Storage Capacity, dickhead. best get Beat Saber deleted pronto. After this, a lot of games got bigger and better. More of the games I already had started to have massive updates, and it meant that I was constantly deleting and re-downloading games all the time. This isn't really a problem anymore. They don't even bother doing a 64 gig model, but it's just a pain. If I wanted to upgrade my storage, I'd have to buy a completely new device. Other than the storage, there's really not much to complain about. I mean, the battery only lasts about 2 hours, which if you're playing solo, is probably more than enough time to get your VR fix. But if you're playing with a group of people, it could be a bit annoying. Overall, I love my Quest 2, and looking back, I'm glad I decided to buy it instead of a PS5 or an Xbox back in 2020. Finally gave everyone a chance to experience what VR gaming had to offer, with little to no compromise, without breaking the bank as well. But would it have killed them to chuck an SD card slot on it? In the years that followed, it seemed that VR gaming was heating up, especially on the Meta platform. Oh, I forgot to mention, Facebook owns the Oculus brand and changed the name of it to the Meta Quest 2 in 2022. To be honest, I've warmed to the new name. It's a lot easier to say and spell. You should see the amount of red lines under the word Oculus in this script. The Meta Quest 2 had an impact on the whole of VR gaming, as for the next few years we've got some insane games releasing, like the Resident Evil 4 port and Among Us VR. And even the big Zuckster himself announced GTA San Andreas was being worked on for the Quest 2, which obviously never happened. But it just showed how much support this platform was getting as game developers realised the full potential of releasing on there. For me, the best time to be a Meta Quest 2 owner was between 2021 and 23. It just seemed like a new great game and unique experience was being announced every week. I mean, a rock climbing game would probably be absolute dog shit on any other platform, but not VR though. It became one of the biggest games on there. We started to get sports titles as well for things like football, basketball and even hand egg. But even though it was those big names of the VR world getting the spotlight like Pavlov and Blade and Sorcery, which they definitely deserved, but for me, one of my favourite parts of the Quest 2 experience was trying the random games and ports found on a website called SideQuest. It essentially gives you a second marketplace to try different games you wouldn't find on the standard Quest marketplace. It's how I found the amazing Half-Life VR port among other games. The possibilities were endless, with so many different games to try, and even some big name franchises started to make their way into the VR space, like Assassin's Creed and the Batman Arkham franchise. But the fun didn't stop there, as some games introduced mods. Blade and Sorcery was one of the main ones, which allowed you to add some insane things to the game, like lightsabers, different soundtracks and arenas to fighting. They were a bit difficult to add at first, but they soon became a lot easier to manage and install. But the biggest one for me was a game called Contractors. It's essentially Call of Duty in VR. It's fast paced and a great casual FPS experience, which only got better when they introduced mod support. It started as just a few multiplayer maps from games like COD and Halo, but then some absolute legend did the unthinkable. One of my favourite game modes of all time is COD Zombies, and I know no one else seems to like it, but I absolutely love it. And when I saw people on PSVR playing Zombies maps in games like Pavlov, I was amazed, but also quite gutted, because I knew that there was a high chance no one would even attempt to bring it over to the Quest 2. But
oh joy! No power!
they did it, and I could not believe it, as it wasn't just some half-baked version of Noct with a few weapons lying around. No, they brought the full experience, with things like perks you could drink, a pack-a-punch machine, the mystery box. You could even reload a ray gun as you would in the real COD. The level of detail these modders went through was so insane, and I had nothing but respect for anyone who worked on these mods, and it's still such a surreal experience even in 2025. Over the next few years, things just seem to keep going up and up, with not only the Quest platform but VR in general. So many great games were releasing monthly, giving players new ways to experience certain genres, like Into the Radius, one of the scariest games I've ever played. It takes inspiration from games like Stalker and Metro, as you explore a wasteland while scavenging for weapons and supplies. Another game similar to that is Ghosts of Tabor, which is heavily inspired by Escape from Tarkov, a very popular extraction shooter on PC. But it wasn't just extraction shooters, other genres were getting some great games as well. There were racing games, puzzle games and some great sports games releasing. Also, there was so much to choose from, it just seemed that the future of VR gaming was bright. So, where are we today? So, to be completely honest, I'm writing most of this video based on memory, and I haven't even touched my Quest 2 in almost 2 years. I was about to write my feelings about VR gaming today, but there's one problem. I haven't even given it a chance. So I'm going to stop writing for a sec and just play it. I realised I had a free trial for Meta Plus, which is essentially their version of Game Pass, and I highly recommend using this if you're new to the platform, as there's a lot of variety available to you straight from the get-go, essentially for free. So I decided to play some games I've never tried before, the first one being Ghosts of Tabor, VR's answer to the popular extraction shooter Escape from Tarkov, but I ran into a problem. You see, my Quest 2 has started to show its age, so when I try to record the newer, more demanding games, the game basically becomes unplayable, so I don't really have a lot of footage. It's been a battle with me and my Quest 2 the last few days, kinda like that scene out of Holes.
I'm tired of this, Grandpa!
That's too damn bad!
But from my experience, the game was fun and challenging, offering a great experience, and I think games like this definitely benefit a lot from being in VR. The level of immersion in games like this and most first-person shooters is that they give full realistic control over the weapons. You don't just press a button that reloads for you, you have to manually reload your gun into bore. You can even manually adjust the scope on the sniper rifle. It's this type of in-depth immersion that just takes the VR experience to another level. And to be honest, first-person shooters are definitely the main event. They utilise the tools this type of control gives you the best and make for some epic moments, only available in VR. Like you can balance a magazine on your gun, then flick it up in the air, catch it and reload your gun, making you feel like Deadpool. This just wouldn't be possible in any other format. Puzzle games like I Expect You to Die are also something you can only experience in this way. The developers of the series have used every single aspect of this platform to make such a unique experience. It's something special, and it's one of those games you can play for hours just trying to get through each level. Also, having things like mini golf and table tennis just to chill and play just goes to show there's so much to play around with that I don't think you can truly ever run out of cool and interesting ways to explore VR. For most of my recording sessions, I decided to go back to some of my old favourites, this mainly being Contractors, Blade and Sorcery and a few others. Being able to just download mods straight from the game's menu means you have endless possibilities on what you can do in these games. This is Blade and Sorcery, and this is also Blade and Sorcery, and then this is also Blade and Sorcery. And then this is, well, this is Contractors, but you get the idea. It was just fun to play around with different mods. It's a shame I can't speak about every single game I've played on the Quest because I'd be here for hours, but honestly there's so many experiences and content for you to play around with, like Stride, a Mirror's Edge inspired free running game. Then there's Pixel Ripped, a game within a game where you play as a kid playing a game, whilst also stopping distractions around as you play. I feel VR has given developers almost another dimension to work with when it comes to these games, as most of the things you see in VR are only possible in this format. Another thing I need to talk about is emulation, which is very big in VR on PC. There's this cool experience where you can play emulators, but you're playing them in a virtual bedroom, which you can customise to your liking, and also insert the game into a virtual console and get that full immersion. I'm not sure if this is possible on the Quest 2, I'm not even going to try, because that video wouldn't be released until December of 2027, but it seems like such a cool experience. The Quest 2 still has emulation capabilities. I've seen Dreamcast and DS games running on it, among others, but the main one I've seen is the PSP. Not only can you run PSP games natively on the Quest 2, some games even allow you to enhance the experience by letting you move your head around and look around the game's world whilst you're playing, which is just such a cool thing to see, being able to play these classic PSP games in an entirely new way. It's just insane and just goes to show the potential of VR as a whole. The last thing I need to talk about is what VR offers is a great social experience. Because there's a microphone built into every headset, most players talk to each other in every game, but there's specific games that are all about social interaction, these mainly being VR Chat and Rec Room. Now Rec Room is a bit frustrating because honestly it is fun and has a bunch of cool mini games for you to play around with, but it's mainly for children under the age of 10, so unless you want Oscar from Midnight Club 3 accusing you of something,
listen, I know you like to hang out with the kids,
then sadly I'd steer clear from it. I wish there was a way to have two different lobbies for different ages, as this would be a great way to socialise and make new friends in VR. VR Chat is the other option. This doesn't really have the same approach, it's more of just a chat room. There's mini games, but they're a bit janky compared to Rec Room, but this was such a cool experience when I started playing back in 2020. Like I said, I was stuck in self-isolation by myself, so being able to socialise, even if it was just through a headset strapped to my head, and that experience and everything else I've spoken about is still there today. This video has taken on so many different forms since I started writing it, but I'm just happy I got to play around in my Quest 2 again. Nowadays, I don't really get any time to set up a VR headset to play for a few hours. I'm a dad now, and my new job can be quite physical, so the thought of playing a game while standing up and moving around sounds like absolute torture. Take COD Zombies for example. Experiencing it in VR is what I used to dream about, but now I've played it a few times, the novelty has worn off, and I'd rather just play Black Ops 3 custom maps in bed on my Steam Deck. So maybe I should just rename this video to VR isn't finished, I'm just a lazy bastard. After going back into VR, I can safely say that it isn't finished, it's just stagnant, waiting for something to get back to where it once was. But the company that owns the biggest platform in the space isn't helping too much. For the past few years, Meta has been hell-bent on advertising the headset for anything but gaming. There's ads of people using it to help put flat pack furniture up, which sounds like the most annoying experience in history and something I don't think has or will ever be done by an actual person. Every ad is based around you using the headset for working out or setting up business meetings in a virtual space, and at the end of the ad they're like, oh yeah, it also has games. Even when you open up the menus trying to find the store where the actual games are, you get so much absolute brain rot being thrown in your face that for me personally just feels like Meta are almost trying to sabotage that great gaming experience we once had in the pursuit of this weird virtual world experience no one cares about. We just want to play cool games, but there is something coming that could save the genre, that being the Steam Frame, Valve's standalone headset. Not much is known of it yet, but knowing Valve, the games will come first, and I think that's what VR needs right now. A new platform where it's all about the games to hopefully reboot it and take it to the next level. Hopefully Valve can pull it off. I've just realised how long this video has been. If you've watched to the very end, and thank you so much, and honestly, go try VR if you haven't already. It's such a great experience, and I've honestly loved getting the footage these past few weeks, but this video has gone on long enough. Thank you for all the support and what has really been a tough year for me. Honestly, it means so much. I hope you all have a great new year, and I'll see you when I see you.